Welcome to Freeposium with Pilates 804 and me, Danica Kellam-Derolu. In this Freeposium, the topic is modification or variation. We'll be talking about the difference between a modification and a variation, when you should or need to use a modification, and how to make variations that are purposeful, fun, and challenging. A modification and a variation are not the same thing, and each is used for different objectives in practice and teaching. And a lot of times you will hear people refer to something as a variation, but really it's being done to modify the exercise. So let's talk about modifications. They don't change the goal. They make the goal more attainable. For example, position in space. Modify an exercise when the body cannot create an effective position in space. And there are a plethora of reasons why a body would be challenged in space, but there's always a way to modify an exercise so that movement is achievable. It may not be the textbook visual of what the exercise is supposed to be. For example, the 100. How many people when learning the 100 struggle with the position of forward flexion with the head, shoulders, and lifting the thoracic out of the floor? You'll hear people complain of neck, throat strain, shoulders, even some people get like the blinding, pulsing headache thing. Well, that would be a time to modify. It's not worth making them suffer through the exercise, and it's definitely not worth putting them in pain. They'll have a bad association with what you're doing, and then you've lost a client. And for yourself, you're not going to keep doing the work if it hurts. Okay, so the position in space itself, the 100, is a hard position. Modify when you see that that position needs assistance and the client is not achieving what you know they can. Another reason is to support movement. And again, going back to the 100, you can see where I'm going. When movement is inhibiting, modifying will build range and strength gradually. And then as they build that strength gradually, they're able to move more, they're able to do more things. And you are putting trust into your client. They trust you and they're going to keep coming back. And in yourself and in your own practice, you get stronger, you're able to progress, you're able to do things that you didn't think before. Okay. And it's really important to support movement when you're rehabbing from injury or you've really, just not been working out for a long time, right? You come back and your body's a little different than it was the last time. So support the movement with the modification. So how do you modify, right? So determine the site of most discomfort that is hindering movement or execution and support that site, the body, with props and decide if a whole new position is necessary altogether. Again, going back to that 100, just put the head down, maybe pillows underneath the head in order to elevate and gradually get them out of the mat, right? Always remember that the choreography is a suggestion and range is variable. Pull back on range and target a specific element, muscle group, or movement quality. All right. I'm going to give now the example of stomach series single leg stretch, pulling one knee to your chest while the other leg is stretched out, and you're curved up again, that 100 curve, heads out of the mat. All right. A lot of people love to take that straight leg in the single leg stretch and just shove it out low onto the ground. But then it's yanking on their back, and then their necks are yanking back and forth every time they switch the knees. The choreography wants this idea of like, yes, get that leg down, but modify, pull it back, shorten the range, really find a true working range of motion, which a lot of the times is a lot less than what someone thinks their working range is. Okay. But when you pull back on the range, you're able to let them take the mental time to feel the exercise differently. And then that starts to help them connect and get stronger. Right. Another way to modify is to fine tune fundamental skills. right? A lot of times we just start moving and moving feels great, but the movement might be shearing us off the connectivity to center, right? And I will take apart an exercise, say the roll up, from lying down, rolling up, reaching out over the legs, and rolling all the way down. That is a very difficult thing to execute, especially if someone has had some tissue issues in the lumbar, right? So modify by bringing them up to sitting so that you are then cutting the range of how much they have to come up from the floor to get down to the floor, right? Bring them to sitting and fine tune the actual movement of the pelvis curling in order to initiate movement in the lumbar spine, right? Because you cannot mobilize the lumbar without actually rocking the pelvis some way, somehow. And working that fundamental to help break the exercise into something successful and attainable will build strength. And that is not a variation, right? That is actually saying, hey, we're taking apart this exercise, really working this part of it to give you the strength to build so you can build the range and you can build the choreography into something else. But now we will talk about variations, okay? And you build, break down, and layer choreography to teach, inform, and challenge. That's what variations are, right? And you can cut and paste and extract choreography snippets to layer and create new sequences or exercise flows. And you can use new sequences to build a workout, obviously, but you could also use them to fine tune skills. For example, we'll go back to the idea of the roll up, start seated, curving back and then pulling one knee to the chest, stretch the leg out, roll back forward. You've now combined a little bit of your roll up with a single leg stretch, one leg bent, one leg straight, right? That would be a variation, okay? Because in your roll up, you're really trying to keep your legs both down, right? So let's vary it by adding some moving parts. I'll speak more on that on just a minute, right? But variations, unlike modifications, you're really exploring movement potential and you're really trying to go get to the next place and feel how you have access to movement and get stronger. So if your teaser is like easy peasy, that was no big deal, then what else can you do in the teaser? Right? Can there be big arm circles? Can there be lowering and lifting the legs? Right? Because in mat work and advanced work, you get your teaser, your hip circles come out of it. So if you don't have variations to prep you for moving the legs and moving the arms, then how are you going to get to that next advanced exercise that does come in the advanced mat work, right? And in exploring movement potential, you can link exercises together in fun combinations and mix things up. And it gives a fun aspect to a class that you're teaching and you keeps your class on their toes. What I love to do is just kind of put all the rolling exercises together to teaser. Like do a rolling like a ball to a balance, to an open leg rocker, to a balance, to a hold, roll out your teaser, come up. Let's do a little hip circle, and then do it all over again, right? And just taking that and just varying the order of exercises and where you put things can bring a whole new layer of challenge, and having to sew the exercises together in a different way makes you have to think about how your body connects to the exercise and how to do it. So like I was saying, variations build, break down, and layer so that you can teach, inform, and challenge. And how do you create variations? All right, now the important thing to remember that I already just said is that the more moving parts in and out of center, the more challenging the exercise will be. It will take more core strength, more integration, more control, right? So if all of a sudden you're doing your 100 and you're pumping your arms and then you decide, well, I'm going to lift a straight leg and I'll do scissors with the legs while I'm pumping the arms. It's a thing. Try it out, right? That's hard. Because the more moving parts you have, the harder something becomes. That's also why the roll up is so hard. You have to move all the joints of your spine and your pelvis. and then do it in reverse, right? Okay. And you can take exercises to different pieces of apparatus and adjust choreography accordingly. Now, there are certain pieces, I'm sorry, certain exercises that are done on every single piece of apparatus, like the 100. It literally can be done on every single piece of like large apparatus. I mean, right? So, and the mat work. But as you take 100 to, say, the ladder barrel to versus the low chair versus the reformer, it's a whole new 100 everywhere you go. Okay. One easy way to vary, right? This one doesn't really take any thought whatsoever, is change up the rhythm with breath and timing and movement quality, right? So let's say you're doing a double leg lower and a double leg lift. You could just inhale lower and inhale, exhale lift. Or you could say inhale as you lower, 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 hold begins your exhale, lift it up, 1. Inhale, lower down, 1, 2, 3, hold, start your exhale, bring it up, 1. And then you can just reverse that. And it again, it keeps people on their toes and they have to keep listening. And that is making their brain fire, which we don't see that happening in there. But I promise you, it's happening. And it's a huge part of the work, making those brains do the things, right? And then don't be afraid to go outside the box and just have fun. There are no Pilates police, right? Now, be safe. Be safe. Like, don't stand on a foam roller while you juggle weighted balls and ask people to do swan. That's insane. Okay. Right? But feel free to play around in your own workouts, see what happens, and then make it something. Follow the rules of the methodology and make it something. Then you're creating variations organically because you're moving into them. I do not recommend using variations that you haven't tried yourself. Okay? Because we see a lot of things and we're inundated with a lot of visuals all over social media and everywhere, but do not teach anything you have not tried yourself in terms of a variation, because you really need to know how to do it. And of course you can add props to anything for modifications or a variation. See, talking about props, right? Props are great for both modifications and variations, but not necessary for variations. Sometimes modifications need a prop. Okay, that's very important to think about that. Like, right? Like, you can make variations upon variations and you don't need to add props. You can for fun. You can add weights. You could add your magic circle, but you don't necessarily have to add it to make a variation. But there are times where when you have to support people in space and body positions where you need a prop, a magic circle behind the head to help lift, a TheraBand to help replace a tight hip flexor, even a leg weight to just give the sensory reality that a leg exists, right? But there are times where you're going to need a prop to help and assist, get someone into a position if they can achieve it, and to keep them out of pain sometimes so that they can even just execute something. Now, that's really why the equipment was created, so that Joe could have people who weren't ready to do his mat work, and they were bedridden, they were in the internment camp, and he said, all right, let's make some equipment to assist you. So really all of the equipment is just some big giant props. Wow, I can hear someone really upset about me saying that right now, but it is kind of the truth. He made the mat work first, and then he made the equipment to make you strong enough to do the mat work. So sometimes maybe you need a pillow underneath your head to make your neck strong enough, you know? Here's the truth. It is a fine line between a modification and a variation, and they can often look like the same thing. It is your intent and purpose that clarifies the difference, right? And in that, you should be able to discuss with yourself, with your client, and anybody off the street who asks you why you chose what you chose when you chose to do what you did, right? And that is what clearly makes the difference between a modification and a variation. And when you're deciding to which one to do, ask yourself, what exercise do I struggle with and how would a modification help me be more successful? Like go through your repertoire that you know and ask yourself. And then you start creating little modifications that you're going to be able to use with your clients. What props that you have access to can you use in a supportive way versus which ones are just extensions of equipment? Like I was just saying that the equipment really is supposed to be supportive in itself, right? But we know that leg springs are really challenging too. So when are you using a prop to be supportive, or when are you using it to just be equipment? And if you want more clarification on that, check out the Freeposium on props and variations. I mean, on props. We're talking about variations. I'm losing my mind, friends. Right? Is the variation just adding challenge, or is it extending from a purpose? And it's not wrong to do it just for a challenge, but know that you are, right? And are you being stifled by how the exercise should be done? Now, this is a hairy conversation. I get it. But, look, nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing has to be perfect. Pilates is not a performance. Pilates is not about perfection. It is about practice, right? And it is about owning your practice, right? And if something in the idea of how you should execute exercise is really hindering your success at it, or hindering your client's success at it because you are seeing it in your mind a certain way or hearing it taught a certain way, then you know what? Break outside of the box. Decide if you need to modify it or if you need a variation to help you get through it, right? And then own it. Own it and justify it within the method, and I'm all there for you. All right. You guys have an awesome day, and I hope you join me next time.